So this is what generates literature, poems, and expression and creativity and my I amness. And now I would love you to read one of your poems.
Oh boy. Okay.
I really do have such a deep appreciation of what you write.
Well, thank you. Um, I don't if you didn't put any limits on me.
No, I
So,
didn't.
uh, but given what we've been talking about, I want to read something from my second book. I mean, I'm happy to read more than one thing, but I want to read something from my second book, if
All
that's
right, I'll trust your judgment.
my second book is all about this theme of permission. This is the cover of the book, Brief Evidence of Heaven, Poems from the Life of Anna Mary Douglass.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So Anna Mary Douglass was Frederick Douglass's first
Yeah,
wife.
right.
She was his wife for 44 years, which is a long time to do anything. And not to mention being married. Um, and she was the opposite of her husband in several respects. In the most significant one for me, she never learned to fully read and write.
That's astonishing, isn't it?
And she's married to who what
Mhm.
the most noted black man
Yeah,
on publishing books in the 19th century.
yeah.
So that was one of the reasons why she caught my attention and engaged my imagination. Because I've been married a long time, and some of the marriage is an interesting dynamic, and for people to be that different, I started thinking about her, and she had 5 children with him. So, and that brings its own dynamic. So I started to read about her because there was nothing to read from her. So I started to read about her, and she really engaged my imagination as someone who did not let the fact that she couldn't read and write contain her. Um, and so she, in short, I sensed that a badass here, and I wanted to think about what was that like for her. One of the real uh, sticking points for me when I was thinking about making a book about her was that because I was doing all this historical reading, that anybody who was everybody in the anti-slavery movement, in the abolitionist movement, was coming to her house. So she was exposed to all these types. Oh, I know which one I'm gonna read. She was exposed to all these types, and yet, and of course, Frederick Douglass has been written about by countless historians, but we never hear anything about her. Not from him. Hello. That was the other thing that forced me to make this book. He says very, very, very little about his first wife. And the historians who follow up talking about his whole career said almost nothing because I skimmed many, many books in the course. And so when I thought about that, I was like, okay, here we got a black woman with the hood thrown over her head, with everything she's done uh, being dismissed or erased. And so I wrote this poem among many, and the book is an entirely persona. All the poems in the book are written in persona. So, oh, on the back, this is an actual picture of her.
Yeah, I see. That's a beautiful picture.
It's pretty much the only one that exists.
Wow.
There's one photograph. This is from a painting that hangs in the parlor of the National Park Service site, which is in Washington, D.C., which is the last house that they lived in.
Yeah.
I spent a long, long time staring at that picture too, and like, communicating with her. But yeah, I just thought so much about, when I read, you all of these names that you come across, John Brown, of course, Harriet Tubman, of course, Garrison, William Lloyd Garrison, who worked with Frederick Douglass on anti-slavery issues, and a host of other people. All of these people came to her house. She was the hostess. She had to fix tea and food and bring stuff on trays, or, organize all that, all the domestic aspects that nobody talks about. And so I wrote this poem, which again is a persona poem, so meaning the voice, the speaker of the poem is her, not me. It's called John Brown. John Brown is not a lie. The air is full of his name. No saint you have in him. But then I have not seen a saint alive in a body ever. Spirits recognize him. In their country, he owns a sprawling house. Something shot its way into his blood. Could be God sang a memory. Could be Brown woke soon and clear to catch it. He sways like a bloodhound, prying the song out of every roof. Slim as a rifle. The stain of him rides all over this republic. Between the seventh plank of a loosened floor and white hair bright as straw. Between two fingers and a dark tobacco leaf rolling. Where is the army of Browns? The army of white men with hearts instead of vaults and dogs.
Oh my goodness.
So that's one from that period in the 1850s and 60s, when the the civil war was brewing and heating up and starting, and the abolitionist movement was operating in a high pitch. And if I could just say one thing about that, one of the pieces of research I found, it's been too long, this book is 10 years old now, and so the research was done before that. But somewhere in one of the many books I read, it might have been Free People of Color. I can't remember the first name of the author, but the last name was Horton. But in a number of places where I was doing research, it turns out that people in the abolitionist movement were racist too. Nothing is easy, right? They were racist too. They were their whole modus operandi, and that's not everybody, of course. Nothing is never absolute. But one of the reasons that Douglass broke with William Lloyd Garrison was because William Lloyd Garrison was kind of a racist too. They didn't necessarily, they wanted to be in charge of liberating Black people. They didn't think Black people had the sense to do it themselves. And they were responding to like a sort of God motivation, but at the same time they didn't see Black people as equal to them either. So that it was possible to be a white supremacist and an abolitionist, and I was a little mind blown by that. So I didn't, from what I've read about John Brown, I don't think he fell in that category, but I felt like he would be amongst these various players in her living room. I felt like John Brown would be someone that Anna Mary Douglas would look at in a particular way and has something to say about. So that's where that poem came from.
That's a beautiful, beautiful poem. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it is a perfect match to a really good many levels of our conversation today.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I
So,
felt like she had to give herself permission to do anything. She was born her parents were b enslaved, but for some reason, I never quite fully found out about the laws in Maryland where she was born, but something shifted by the time she was born, so she was born free, even though her parents had
mhm.
were former slaves, enslaved people. So and she was one of maybe 13 kids. So, they were dirt poor, they were farmers, she would have had to be someone who gave herself permission to move to Baltimore, to find work as a domestic worker, to save money that she ends up giving to this guy that she meets on the wharf named Frederick Bailey, who has this notion about escaping. So, and then she moves and then, they get in a relationship and they get married after he escapes, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, this woman is she's got none of the tools, none of the currency that supposedly is gonna establish you in this world at this time." And it didn't stop her. So
That's what I love about the glorious experiment of that species we call humanity in its entirety. It's one of the focuses of this foci of this podcast is I'm really committed to making it clear that any human being, I don't care what gender, I don't care what nationality, I don't care what race, every human being is a magical gift to life. And anything that any one of us can do, lend a thought, lend a hand, lend whatever, share whatever we need to share. At the same time, I feel I've taken an oath, a personal oath in my life. I won't stand by and watch someone else's soul be annihilated. I won't stand by silently. I will not do that, including my own soul. And I find that human beings have this capacity. They just have it. And I find that people of color, because they have not, I mean, we've been terribly manipulated, but there's some ways in which we cannot be manipulated. And I find that is an extraordinary exception that people misunderstand. That's my view of it.
mm, mhm.
They don't value it if they can even perceive it.
Yeah, if
If,
indeed.
if indeed. So that was a perfect poem to read. I knew I could count on you.
Can I do one more? Is there time to do one more?
Absolutely, because this is the time. Go for it.
So I wanted to, to give equal time. I wanted to read something from my newer book, which is nice cover. It's called
Oh,
Migration Letters.
I love that cover.
And I'm twixt in between as to what. But yeah, all right, I'm gonna do this one.
Okay.
Sticking with the whole permission thing. Because it really is central. It really is an important point. I'm not sure what I think it's some of it explains many things, the reasons that people surrender to inhumanity, the reasons that people follow uh go down paths that counter everything that they believe, or the reasons that people give up on themselves, give up on what their magic is. Has a lot to do with, the permission thing. Um, and yeah, this is not a poem that I read a lot, but it actually intersects in an interesting way with what we've been talking about in a less predictable way. So just very briefly, the book is called Migration Letters because a place, time, and circumstance led me to realize that the people who raised me, um, on both sides, mother and father, that I was a product of the Great Migration. Both of my parents migrated from the South to Philadelphia, and that whole generation of people, significantly, we just lost the last one in my family
Mm.
a couple weeks ago. So my auntie, who was 96, she was the last one in my mother's family. So they're completely on the other side now. But I learned a lot from those people. I closely observed them. They're all in my head. Um, they had a lot of influence on me growing up. But when I realized that, these people aren't going to last forever, and they're full of mystery, and they're full of resilience and story that has a lot to do with who I am. So I needed to try and talk about them at this moment as they're sort of uh,
Mm.
transitioning. So these poems, but then it started there, and then I start. Part of the realization is that my generation of people is not that young anymore either. Hello, and so what have we what are we about as people who were raised by southern people, but grew up in the north in a different kind of environment, radically different than
Mm.
the people who raised us. And so it necessitated looking at my own points of transition and change. And so this poem comes from the last section of the book, where I'm looking more at influences on my generation. And this poem is about somebody who really gave himself permission. And yet, well, you'll see what I say in the poem. The poem is called Hendrix Once. Jimmy on Dick Cavett's show got your full attention in girly hot funk finery and a mustache. You recognized the cobalt halo, the aqua boots of a weary prince, sapphire sweat beating his southern axe, roping the neck of his six string, lighting a down home track in his elsewhere way. But his how and his who, a tangle, traveling in his stowaway heart, invisible thread, amusement park logic, an accent that couldn't possibly compute. Blues was a gut bucket, the old women said. Did that explain why his free didn't seem free? An overhang somehow, rimming despite his orange. Under that fried, desperate hair, his kneading, despite the brocade patches lining his pockets, white handprints all over him, white in the creases of his mouth. Nobody to tell him he was ashy. His train whistle circling, his train whistle calling out names, his train whistling so far off.
Mm. Wonderful. Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Beautiful, beautiful perspective and peek beneath the obvious. What was
Yeah, yeah. I the whole time I was teaching at Ursinus, there was a big poster of Jimi Hendrix in my office, and so I used to look at him every day, you know. And yeah, he made a huge impression that I never really, you know, it was in me, but it wasn't coming out in any way in my work. And when I started looking at my life and my influences, I was like, yeah, here's another badass out here, you know, like because you know, my students were all like, oh, Dr. Keita, you're into Hendrix. I'm like, please, yes, sir. Although I didn't, like many people of my generation, black people of my generation, I didn't really get into him until he was almost out of this world. When he first showed up, we were all like, okay, who are you? You know?
As is often the case.
Yeah, right, right. Takes, you know, but he didn't. He was who he was. You know, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this and I'm that, and I'm all of it. You know,
And
handle it.
I'm unbothered, and here it is in sound.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for that. This has been a juicy and wide ranging and personal and authentic and in a little way prophetic as I hoped it would be. I,
Mm,
yeah, I just am so grateful for your sharing this time with me and a glimpse of you and the sound of your words. I'm deeply grateful. So thank you for doing this with me. And please, I'm going to say farewell, but I'm cautioning you that I'm sending the form because I want people to be able to reach out to you. You just never know. You just never,
yeah, no, I take that point very strongly these days. You never know. You know, if you're blessed to wake up, you don't know what the day's bringing to you. So,
and who you can be a breath of fresh air on a flame of someone who's about to give themselves permission.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that we hit on that theme, right?
No, it was totally organic, which is so fun. That's what I love about doing this podcast is it allows for those things to just show up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Things that are like waiting to be said.
Yeah, totally agree. I love doing this. So again, thank you so much, Nzadi Michelle Keita. I appreciate you. And I'm so glad that we're kind of sort of neighbors. We're living in the same community. It's a powerful oath that we share with our poet community, among other
Definitely.
things. Thank you, dear.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay.
Take
Adios.
care.